to the second episode of the Disney Librarian. Today we are talking about the next big step in the evolution of the Disney Studios, Oswald, the Lucky Rabbit. A very ironic name considering this story involves betrayal, a breakup, but ultimately it is a story of triumph. Our story begins in 1927 Los Angeles, where Walt Disney and his friend Charles Mintz were producing the Alice comedies. As the costs continued to increase to make those shorts, it was decided to come up with something new, so Charles Mintz met with Universal Pictures. There they agreed to do 26 animated shorts. So Walt Disney and Charles Mintz decided to find a new character. With the help of Ub Iwerks, they devised a rabbit, Oswald, the Lucky Rabbit. So Walt and Ub Iwerks set to work. First they came out with Poor Papa, but it was kind of flat. Disney wasn't really happy with the quality of the work, and neither was Universal. So Disney went back to the drawing board, literally. So Walt wanted to give Oswald a personality and actually create a storyline, which was not common in the animated shorts of the 1920s. Now, Mintz had some suggestions for the character, but Walt wasn't having anything to do with it. So, once they start working on this new storyline and this new character, out pops Trolley Troubles. It is a hit. Disney loved it. Universal loved it. More importantly, the public loved it. So, real quickly, Disney Studios had to balloon in size. That year, he had to grow to 22 employees, and for the next 18 months, they created 25 additional shorts. Disney directed nearly all of them. Iwerks was the primary animator. Later episodes actually included future famous animators such as Hugh Harman, Roland Hamilton, and Fritz Freelong. There were interesting titles such as The Mechanical Cow, where Oswald played with, I guess we would now call it a robot cow, but and he did not dispense milk, but we'll leave that be. So he also was in, some of the stories were absolutely hilarious. The Ocean Hop, The Banker's Daughter, Rickety Gin, Harem Scarum, Neck and Neck, The Old Swimming Hole, Hungry Hobos, Oh What a Night, which was remade several years later with Mickey Mouse in it. Poor Papa was eventually released, even though it wasn't as well done as the others. By that point, Oswald was already a hot commodity, so they could kind of get away with releasing the less than stellar one. There was also Sleigh Bells, Tall Timber, Fox Chase, and The Skyscraper is yet another one that was released with Mickey Mouse several years later. Now comes the sad part of the story. When it came time to sign a new contract with Mintz, Walt's planned to ask for a bigger budget on the Oswald projects. Disney thought he held all the cards, so just to kind of hedge his bets, he met with MGM beforehand, hoping to be able to have a contract in hand before going to do negotiations with Mintz. But nothing was going Walt's way, he just didn't realize it yet. So Mintz not only refused to increase the budget, he countered Walt with a budget cut. Well, Walt became really nervous, and that night he sent a telegram to his brother Roy saying, hey, lock down all the artists. I'm not sure how the negotiations are going. Actually, I think the telegram words were a little bit more terse than that. So Walt even reached out to Universal, but they kind of weren't giving him the time of day. Walt knew the writing was on the wall. When Charles Mintz met with him one more time and said, well, hey, why don't you come work for me and I'll pay you and Roy a salary? Mind you, it would have been pennies on the dollar. What Walt did not know is Mintz had already gone behind his back, already locked in a 3-year contract with Universal, already went to the animators working for Disney and offered them more money to come work for him. So by the time Walt finds everything out, it's too late. Walt was devastated and swore he would never work for someone else, and he would own everything he created. The train ride home to LA is famous because that's when, oh, we'll talk about that in another episode. So, Walt is out. Mintz is in. So Mintz immediately gave the Oswald project to his brother-in-law, George Winkler. George set up a brand new studio that was employing a good number of former Disney studio animators. Ironically, it was only a year later when Universal did to Mintz what Mintz did to Disney. They basically kicked out Mintz's producer, they kicked out George's animator, and George's studio, all gone. Instead, the production went over to Walter Lantz, who is best known as the creator of Woody Woodpecker. Now, Mintz did still profit because he had a contract with Universal, but not to the money he expected, and he had zero control. Many of the animators did go back to Disney, tail between their legs, and he actually took quite a few of them back. But that said, Universal, between 1929 and 1943, created approximately 100 short films. Now, they may have had Oswald and some of the other characters, but none of them had personality. None of them had storyline. That's what made Oswald famous in the 1927 and 1928 releases. So his popularity waned, and sadly, most of the films from the Universal days have been lost to history. In the 1930s, Walter Lantz did re-release a handful of the original Disneys, but he added synchronized sound because it's important to understand. In 1927, 1928, synchronized sound did not exist in motion pictures. So now, we're watching a movie and we hear the people talking, we hear things happening around the scenery. That didn't happen in the early days of film. In the later years, Oswald had a voice. There were some notable talents such as Tex Avery, Mel Blanc, Walter Lantz himself, and even movie star Mickey Rooney. In the current century, you have veteran voice actor Frank Welker, who speaks for Oswald in video games and other appearances for the Disney property. So what was so special about Oswald? Frankly, he was unique. In a time where most cartoons involved sight gags, Disney created a real personality. Now, the first film was standard animation fare in the 1920s, but then Disney gave Oswald life. Mintz wanted him to have a monocle and be dressed like a dapper kind of guy, but Disney wanted more. He wanted him to feel three-dimensional in a two-dimensional world. So using influences such as silent film star Douglas Fairbanks, Oswald became a real character. His body was fluid and sometimes even surreal. The studio would use perspective techniques and point-of-view shots common today, but brand new in 1927. Oswald was so popular, his face sold chocolate bars and all sorts of other amazing souvenirs before this was a thing. If development had continued under Disney and not been stolen by Charles Mintz, there is some people who theorize he would have been even bigger than Mickey Mouse. Oswald had more than personality. He had love. His first girlfriend was Fanny, this sweet and innocent rabbit. But by the 4th or 5th episode she's in, frankly, she's more like Jessica Rabbit. And we only know her name because it's written in some of the copyright material. A later Universal episode even lists her as the sister to Oswald. Very strange. Anyway, by the banker's daughter, Fanny is out, Hortensia is in, and she's a sweet female cat that had this amazing, adorable personality. She's actually the model that Walt Disney used when he later created Minnie Mouse. So, like Fanny, Hortensia's name's not written on any of the visuals, but she's listed in scripts as Hortensia, Sadie, Fanny, even Miss Zulu and Bright Lights. Later, Universal Studios calls her Kitty, but some of their scripts call her Fanny. Some of the scripts called Fanny the Rabbit Hortensia. It was so confusing, nobody could seem to make up what her name was. But finally, when the video game Epic Mickey came out, she was officially christened Hortensia. Her name is Italian for the hydrangea flowers that come in many colors, and her personality is filled with many colors. In the early cartoons, a gruff character named Pete was trying to steal her away from Oswald. That love triangle might sound familiar. You've seen it in many others, including most famously in Popeye. But by the time modern day comes and we have the video games, Pete's gone. As a matter of fact, Hortensia is now Oswald's wife. She is the voice of reason. She brings calm to Oswald's hyperness. And, oh, yeah, she's also mother to Oswald's 420 children. She is depicted with a tail in the 1927 cartoons, but very quickly it disappears. As a matter of fact, you will not see her displayed with a tail outside of some modern day souvenirs in the Japanese park. So in the video games and graphic novels, her outfit's a cute little purpley pinkish number, but officially now, and this is how she's displayed in all the parks, she has a cute little green skirt and a little green hat with a flower popping out the top. So how did Oswald get home? Well, it's kind of a funny story. Now, of course, Walt never forgot the betrayal and the loss of his early creation. As a matter of fact, it affected all of his business dealings from then on out, up until he passed. Sadly, he did not see Oswald come home. But in 2006, there was this sports commentator with ABC Sports named Al Michaels. Now, he'd been with ABC for about 30 years, but he wanted to join the John Madden team on NBC. This required him to get out of his contract. CEO of Disney at the time was Bob Iger. Now, it's important to know that Disney owned ABC. That's why Michaels had to ask Iger to get out of the contract. So Iger said, sure, calls up NBC. He wants a swap. He will give NBC Michaels if he can get back Oswald. Now, Iger had heard the stories, had read the things that Disney had lamented about, especially Oswald. And he had made it his mission that Disney was going to get Oswald back. Here was his opportunity. And, of course, nobody at ESPN and ABC Sports or NBC Sports knew who Oswald was, and frankly didn't even realize they owned him. So after a lot of running around, discussions, digging, NBC Universal, that's right, Universal had bought NBC. So NBC Universal had the rights to Oswald. Disney ABC wanted the rights to Oswald. Michaels wanted to go from ABC to NBC. Kind of see where this is going? So it was finally decided that, well, yeah, Oswald can go home. Al Michaels even made a joke about it at the time, saying that he was going to be a footnote on some trivia question somewhere. And sure enough, he is. How did we get Oswald? Al Michaels wanted to leave. So, by 2007, Oswald was again on merchandise. Some of his films that had been found were even released on DVDs. And now he appears in the parks, video games, graphic novels, you name it, he is part of the Disney family again. So, that brings us to today, 2021. Of the 27 Disney short films, Universal only had 13 prints. They turned all of them over to Disney along with the rights to it. And these were later released in the 2007 Oswald, the Lucky Rabbit Disney Treasure DVD set. Now, in 2006, it was believed that other films were completely lost, and all that was existing was sketches, scripts, individual animation cells. However, fortunately, as we see with some other old films and shorts, they are reappearing. They are being found in private archives, in different country archives. In the past few years, 6 nearly complete and 1 partial film were found in Britain, Japan, Belgium, and even Austria. Now, there is hope that more will be found in private archives. Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Disney Librarian. I hope you enjoyed learning about Oswald the Lucky Rabbit. If there's a topic that you would like to hear about, please let me know in the comments below.